Over the years, our kids have had a lot of illnesses. 6 kids means a lot of childhood sniffles and coughs. And when our kids weren't feeling well, it affected our entire home. Luckily, some clever guys in Brisbane have come up with the perfect solution: Rehydrate.
Rehydrate are delicious drinks that rehydrate up to 3 times faster than water alone, packed with essential electrolytes. Rehydrate is one of the few rehydration products that is safe for all ages. Stock up at Coles and be prepared whenever illness strikes.
This is the Happy Families podcast with Dr. Justin Coulson. We are Luke and Susie, and this is the podcast for time-poor parents who just want answers now.
And today, we have a question from Hannah that we're going to address. And it's all in this area of parenting. Dr. Justin Coulson from happyfamilies.com.au joining us.
We got the question, Dr. Justin, and we just went, we're not equipped.
No way.
So let's...
We'll let you handle
Let's throw
this.
you under the bus. So let's have a look at this question.
The question from Hannah is about how to talk to our kids about the big current issues. And there's loads in this area, whether it's about the plebiscite or whether it's about shootings overseas, massive disasters and tragedies that are striking our world all the time. How do we as parents, or do we as parents, address these issues with our children?
Wow. Okay, so we won't talk about any specific issue because you've just thrown a
There's a
whole
lot of different
handful of
ones.
those issues in, yeah. And obviously, a lot of people have some fairly strong opinions about these issues too. So the general response that I give parents is, what are your kids asking the question for? If you're bringing it up, that's fine. You can bring it up because you want to educate your kids about what's going on overseas or what's happening here in this country in relation to marriage and relationships and those kinds of things.
Presumably, if you're bringing it up, you know how to address it with your children.
That's what I would assume. So with Hannah's question, she's saying, how do you respond?
Yeah.
And my response to that is, if they're bringing it up, they've got one of 2 motives. They're either concerned or they're curious. Now, normally, younger kids are concerned, but not necessarily that curious. For example, let's look at that, that horrific shooting that happened recently in the United States. Kids are going to bring that up, particularly if they're younger, because they're concerned about their own safety and about the safety of their family and loved ones and what happens if I'm at school or I'm at a concert and something awful like that happens. They don't need us to give them all the answers. They just need us to understand, to empathise, to show love, to show compassion, consideration. And that's where we give them a hug and we say, when we hear things like that, it's really scary, isn't it? But as they get older, they tend to be less concerned because they recognise that it's on the news, so it must be unusual. And, the news is all about creating outrage and creating fear. Because that keeps people watching it, right? That's all the news is really for, outrage and fear. And so they might not enunciate that well, but they know that that's what the news is for, to let us know crazy stuff that's happened so we can be worried. But they might be curious instead. And young kids don't tend to be as curious. They might say, why? And then that's about it.
We have a wire at the moment.
But once they get to about the age of, and let's face it, most kids under about the age of 10 don't care about the news anyway, under the age of 14 for crying out loud.
Yeah.
And they don't even care. So that means that if they are coming to you, they're probably concerned, not curious. Once they get curious, that's where we start to engage in conversations with them. And it's pretty simple. You say, well, what have you heard? And how do you feel about that? And what would you like to know? And then you answer their questions to the extent that they're curious. Now, whether that's to do with the plebiscite, you might say, well, what have you heard? How do you feel about it? What do you think? And what do you think we should do about it? And you can have that conversation of whether it's in relation to a tsunami or a volcano or a shooting or a whatever. You get to say, well, what have you heard? What do you know? What do you think? And what can I tell you?
It's interesting because I came across a conversation with my 6-year-old that related to marriage that just spontaneously popped up that made me think that he hasn't necessarily heard anything, but the way he spoke, I went, like, it's right in the centre. And if he was at school and in the midst of someone said something, like, I almost felt like I maybe needed to equip him with some knowledge that maybe people are upset about this topic. Like, not to even necessarily talk about, because he was, he knows sort of mummy and daddy, and that's really all he knows. And at 6, that's probably, he can't grasp much more. But I really struggled with should I equip him? Because if I don't, surely, in some way, somebody else is going to. This is too big an issue for it to be completely avoided in schoolyard conversation. But I don't know, like, where should I take that, or should I just ignore it?
I've had the same thing with our 8-year-old when it comes to America and North Korea at the moment, and his thoughts about how much do I... Yeah.
So he... Let's just say they haven't heard anything. They're not necessarily curious, but it's such a big conversational topic. You have to assume that maybe they can't avoid it.
And they're two topics that are unavoidable. So when it comes to relationships, marriage, and everything related to that, and I've got to be really clear, I won't be drawn on my opinion on this. I just think it's too important, and people need to make up their own minds about it. It's not my job to influence people.
Yeah, great.
But when it comes to this particular topic, they're going to hear stuff. They're going to hear it at school. They're going to hear it from friends. They're going to see it in the media. They're going to see banners in people's yards and on people's shop fronts for both arguments, and that may prompt curiosity even in younger kids. In that case, I think we tell them the facts to the extent that they're curious, remembering again that when it comes to issues of procreation and intimacy, we probably don't plan on having any of those kinds of conversations until they're at least 8. And when we start to talk about more complex family relationships and so on, we would expect that would happen later than 8 as well. So we want to bear that in mind. But ultimately, if they're asking the question, we need to be responsive to that. And at that point, we have the opportunity to engage with them about what they think about it and also share our values with them. Because as parents, it's our job to share our values. When it comes to something like North Korea, I mean, if I've got a child who says to me, and one of my kids did say this to me the other day, Dad, do you think that there could really be a war? And she's quite young. She was, she's one of my younger kids, and I didn't think I'd ever hear something like that from her. And I said, what makes you worried about it? And she said, it sounds like the guy that runs North Korea is really scary and just absolutely horrible. We should just blow him up or something like that. And I said, wow, you've really taken an interest in international relations. Maybe we can explore some ideas together. And so we had a chat about what the media is telling us and how we really have no idea what's going on. And then we talked about what we can do to make our lives secure and predictable, given that is so far out of our opportunity to have any influence over.
It's quite funny because our kids, as young as they are, never escaped Donald Trump being president. Like they were coming to us with political analysis of this man who's running America, and it was just it came from YouTube and it came from all the
from school.
Yeah, and there's lots of different areas that because information is so readily available. Like in the when I was growing up, you had to read it in a newspaper or watch it on the 6 o'clock news. So we never got caught up on all of this stuff, but with all of the information so accessible, it's a very interesting world to navigate as a parent.
But I love the simplicity of that when our children come to us, we just need to determine, are they curious or concerned? That's a simple first question to answer, I think.
Yeah,
so
and then either give them some empathy or ask them what they know, how they feel, and what you can help them with.
From happyfamilies.com.au, the man with some wisdom in answers when it comes to parenting, Dr. Justin Coulson, thank you for your time.
Thanks, guys.
To find resources answering a lot more questions, you can find those at the website happyfamilies.com.au, or if you're interested in having Dr. Justin Coulson speak at your community group, organisation or event, you can find out more about that at justincoulson.com.